Hi, I'm Christian LaHuerta. Welcome to Leaders Transforming Global Consciousness, the virtual oasis from the fear, uncertainty, and polarization we are collectively experiencing. A place to allow us to dream up what a new world may be like on the other side of the crisis. The theme for the session is 4 Keys to Soulful Leadership as an Awakened Entrepreneur. And I'm delighted and honored to introduce to you Khadija Yansane, the creator of a signature program titled The Client Creation Queen, 8 weeks to get clients, get paid, and live your sacred calling. Welcome, Khadija.
Thank you so much for having me, Christian. I'm glad to be here and to connect with your community.
Yeah, I'm delighted to have you. So can you tell us a little bit about your own journey, your own leadership journey? How did you get started on this path?
Thanks for asking. Well, I am a business coach, and I would have never thought that I would be a business coach. I think in my college years, I wanted to be a counselor, a therapist. And I always joke, my parents are immigrants from West Africa, and my dad's an economics professor. And he would always say in his thick African accent, "Darling, a girl like you should major in business." And Christian, I just thought he just didn't understand me. He didn't get me. I was like, me in business? I felt more sensitive, more thoughtful, more creative. And I think that I had this vision of what, business would be like in the corporate setting. And I didn't feel like that was my personality. And I did go on to become a life coach because I was so passionate about personal development and growth. And I also wanted to be a therapist. And I felt like coaching really explored the heights, the possibilities of what we can be as human beings. And I felt like therapy explored the depths.
Mm.
And I've always sat in women's circles since college. So for, I don't know, over 20 years now, more than that. That I have been in women's circles, and I started to lead women's circles when I decided to start my coaching practice. And I was just a general life coach, which I loved, but because I felt like I could help all kinds of people. And then participants in my group started asking me if I could help them get clients. And I thought, well, I don't see why not. And that kept happening over and over again. And then I decided to make my niche that of business coaching, which is what I do today. But I would have never thought that. And I often joke that, a few years ago, I told my father that he was right. Not that I should major in business, but that, I now get that business is about relationships and coaching is so much about connecting and helping people live their purpose. And I now see it as a part of my mission, but I didn't see that, but my dad saw that years ago. So that's how my journey unfolded. And I don't know that I saw myself as a leader. Now in hindsight, I can see that I've always been a leader, and I think that a lot of people can relate to something that's so natural inside of them they may take for granted, but looking in hindsight, I could see the points where I always loved to speak and be in front of groups, even though it made me nervous at the same time. I've always loved to gather and bring people together. Quite often in a group, I might be the person to raise my hand first, and I think that has been a part of my makeup. But starting and growing my business really helped me step into my leadership and really be willing to see that I did have a voice, and it helped me own my voice and just helping me take up space in the world. And I think that it does that a lot for many of my clients as well.
Yeah, and I love that, and I'm really glad you're bringing that up because I know that and you and I are not the only ones who may have struggled with that word, leadership.
Yeah.
Just like many of us in this movement, in this healing world or coaching world, we struggle with words like teachers and healers.
Yeah.
How was it for you? And you've started speaking about it, but what is, like, giving some examples of how you manifest leadership, how it shows up for you?
Sure.
What does it mean to you? What does the word mean to you?
Well, I love that you brought up. It's true that so many of us do struggle with the word leader. I struggled with the word coach. even though I went through a coaching training, and I have a lot of clients who struggle with the word coach. And I think I just want to say, I think a lot of people struggle with it, especially the word leader, because it can feel like, you know, speaking in front of people is the number one human fear. So that idea of just being in front, people automatically like, I don't know if I want that, all eyes on me, what if I mess up? I think the word leadership also brings up feelings of, you know, authority. And especially if you identify as a heart-centered person, you probably don't want to feel like you're in a position of hierarchy or authority, but I don't think it means that at all. And I think leadership means many things, but it also includes being willing to go first. It also includes being willing to take up space. And I think that any person can be a leader, even, you know, being a leader in your family, being a leader in your community, being a leader at your teacher's school. And it means that you're willing to be responsible for something and care for something. And I do think that we're at a place where we get to define so many things for ourselves, not what we've been spoon-fed. So that means we're at a place where you get to define what success means for you. You get to define what leadership means for you, and you don't have to necessarily do it the way that it has been modeled, if it doesn't resonate with you.
And I love that. And I knew when I was first exposed to your work last year, and I forget even how, but I knew that we would resonate, and so it's true, because that example you used about public speaking, I was a 4.0 student in high school, except for one B. And I didn't set out to do this intentionally back then, but looking back on it, I know that I got that 1B the last semester as a senior so that I would I subconsciously sabotaged my GPA, because back then there was no way that I could have gotten up in front of an auditorium filled with hundreds and hundreds of people and deliver the valedictorian speech. I know. And you know, so, but the positive part of that message is that flash forward these days, you know, I've spoken all over the world. I've spoken at dozens of universities on the TEDx stage. And so that I know from my own personal experience that all this stuff, all of our fears, all of our past traumas can get healed and can get transformed as we step and answer this call to step into our roles as teachers and healers in this most critical time in the evolution of our species.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And I too had a similar feeling regarding public speaking. At the same time, like if I look at my formative years in junior and high school, like I loved to act, I loved to be in front of people, but then at the same time, I had incredible stage fright. And then afterwards, I'd be like, oh my God. But I also loved the rush of it too. And I really had to learn to change my relationship to, rather than saying that I was afraid and I was scared, like now just being able to embrace that energy, maybe call it excitement, and breathe into those sensations rather than letting it terrify me. And I think practice, of course, has really helped me, but also just shifting my relationship to how I was viewing it.
Yeah, I think you're right on, because in the body, the energy of fear is very, very similar to the energy of excitement or anticipation. So sometimes that's all it takes for us to flip that switch and reframe what our bodily experience is like. So there's a lot of wisdom and practical wisdom in what you said. I also resonated very much with you're speaking about the fact that you bridge the business world and the spiritual world, which is one of the main things I wanted to speak with you about, because I mean, I'm almost embarrassed, not quite, but almost embarrassed to say that after 30 years that I've been doing this work, 30 years plus, it's only been probably 4 or 5 since I even had a business account. Like I've been very mission driven, like that's what drives me. And I will continue to hold my work as a mission. But a few years ago, I realized that yes, it will continue to be a mission, but in not treating it as a business, I was actually doing the work a disservice. Mm-hmm. And so now I've got business coach, I've got my business accounts, attorneys, and CPAs as I need them. because I was running everything through my personal banking account.
Yeah.
So I bring this up because I know that I'm not the only one, and that many people, many spiritual teachers, spiritual types, healers, activists struggle with the business part of it. So would you talk about what it means to you to be a spiritual entrepreneur?
Yes. Well, I love that you brought that up, Christian, because I can completely relate. I had everything merged, and I would file my taxes as sole proprietor. And I actually worked with a coach. I've worked with many coaches and still work with coaches, but that was one of the benefits that I got from her, was like setting up my LLC, making sure everything was separate. I had my business account, got my business credit card, all of that stuff. And it's interesting, as a spiritual entrepreneur, and a lot of people that I work with, I don't think that for many of them, not all, for many of them, that part of it doesn't come naturally. And I don't think it came naturally to me. And the reason why I believe that growing our business is a spiritual journey, because as soon as you begin to put yourself out there and share your voice, all of your stuff comes up. Like, am I good enough? Is anyone gonna buy this? Who am I to do this? And I feel like it's such a ripe opportunity to actually ask yourself those deeper questions. Like, if I post something and no one likes or comments it, am I no longer valuable? Does who I am not matter anymore? And so I feel like there's this alchemy that gets to happen. And not only that, you get to really serve and show up for what, if you believe in God, universe, whatever you call it, like, you get to show up for your purpose, for that deeper calling that's inside of you. So on one level, all the shadow parts have the opportunity to heal if you so choose, like all the places where maybe you feel blind, or you want to stick your head in the sand around money and it'll just work out, to like becoming a responsible adult. And like you said, creating that container where you're really taking your business seriously. But then you also get to really like show up and serve and express what's in your heart that was given to you, whether you believe in before birth, at birth, what have you, but you really get to show up and do what you feel like is your calling and purpose. And so
Yes.
it's a huge ripe opportunity, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm reminded, as I was reminded as you were speaking, that, there's a Sufi quote that I love, which is, trust in Allah, but tie your camel. And so that was part of my realization. It's like, I'm really established, and it didn't come easy, but my relationship with money is very, it's like, I'm established in trust. Like, even, and I survived that test of last year, where my, during the pandemic, my income went from, went to zero, basically. And I went from 100,000 miles on an airplane, flying here to do retreats and taking a group there, speaking engagements. I went from 100,000 miles on a plane to zero. And not once did I go into fear or doubt. And I also realized on my journey in professional development and balancing the spiritual part of it, that I needed to tie my camel in this area of finances.
Oh my God, that's I love that quote, and I love that image of. It's interesting because as spiritual entrepreneurs, I think like a lot of people, and I include myself in that, it's like the meditation, the vision boards, the affirmations, the I don't want to say leave this planet, but like living in the higher realms can feel so ecstatic, and like that's what you want to do. But also, you like, we're humans, we're on, like, we incarnated on this plane, and so being able to have like our feet on the ground, and at the same time feel our higher connection. So that's just such a beautiful image that I feel like is imprinted on my mind and heart as well, with the camel.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that too. It really speaks to me. So let's go back to the theme of the interview, of your presentation. What are the 4 keys to conscious leadership, to awakened leadership?
Well, I would say is the first key is to define leadership for yourself. Like, what does leadership, and I feel called to add success in that too, but like, what does leadership mean to you? Not what you imagine. So like when I was sharing earlier that my father saw me doing business and I just had this image that wasn't even true. I'm not even sure where I got it from of what I thought business was, and that it didn't look like me. Later to find out like, oh, I can bring all of me. So the first one is to define leadership for yourself. And are there people that you admire, that you look up to, that you see? Like, part of what's fearful around leadership, for some people it's the responsibility, for some people it's, what if they get haters or they're afraid of harm. And I do feel like there's some real, I don't know, some wounding there around
Mm-hmm.
leadership for a lot of people, but like defining it for yourself, I would say would be the first key. And the second key really, really, really is that you get to bring all of you to the table, which I think is so different. I think we've grown up so compartmentalized. Well, this is your work, this is your family, this is your hobby. And like now we get to bring all of who we are to the table, which I think is something that's so attractive. While so many people are interested to entrepreneurship, is that they get to bring all of themselves to it. So whether that's your mom, you're an artist. I was talking to a client recently, she's an educational consultant. She really helps people around math in schools, but she's also a singer. She's also a Zumba instructor. And so she incorporates all of these things into her work. And I was sharing with Christian before the interview that like my children have been homesick and we had to reschedule. And so it's like, I'm a mom too, like how do we bring all of us to our work? I would say that the third key really is about empowering others. I think the old model of leadership is that like the word dictator is coming to mind, where it's just like you're looking towards one person and they're all knowing and you know less. Whereas now it's about really empowering others to tap into their innate gifts so they can influence the people in their world, their communities, and the world at large. And that's really, my work as a coach really is to help people come back to themselves. So I would say the third key is really leadership. It's a co-creative dance, and it's also about empowering whoever you're helping, whoever you're supporting, to go on without you and let them have that ripple effect out into the world. And I would say that the fourth key around leadership is like, what's the legacy that you want to leave? What's the impact? And I know sometimes legacy can feel like a big word, but we all are leaving a legacy, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And what makes you an awakened entrepreneur or thought leader is that you're putting a lot of thought and intention into what legacy you want to leave. And that might be in the form of a book. Like I'm seeing Christian's book in the back of him, so it's like when he's no longer here for years and years and years to come, people will be able to pick up that book and feel moved by your words. Maybe it's a program, maybe it's a foundation. I'm not sure what it is for you, but just beginning to ask yourself those deeper questions of like, what legacy, what impact do I want my work to have, And it could be, it's interesting. I live in Northern California now, but I used to live in LA. And I started a little writing group, and it was just a few of us, and it's still going on. I don't live there anymore. And so it doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have to be something that you hold in your hand like a product, but it could be that you start something and that other people still get to reap the benefit of what you have put together.
Yeah, I
So
love that. And legacy is a beautiful word for me. And I often use it in my retreats and workshops as well. And interestingly, as I was listening to you speak, is how much overlap there is in the way that I speak, the way you speak about leadership with the way that I speak about power.
yeah.
Because the book that you were just pointing out talks about how we all have, or let's say most of us have, an ambivalent relationship to power. You know, part of us wants it, part of us are afraid of it. And I think part of the ambivalence is that we fear that we might abuse it, that we fear that we might cause harm, or that we might be corrupted by power. And so the book gets into understanding why, and why we have that conflicted relationship, and how we break out of it. And what it guides us in the direction of is like, there is a way of stepping into our power, our personal power, in a way that is not about hierarchy, fear, force, control, domination, that we don't have to turn into dictators, as you were talking about, that there's a way that we can step into power that does not require that we step on somebody, push them down, push our knee to their neck, in order to prop ourselves up and feel powerful. So yeah, yet another area of overlap. And the fact that we both love the Bay Area, I lived there for 20 years and still in my heart.
I love that. Yes, no, we don't have to. In fact, like as you were talking, I was feeling myself, like seeing myself holding hands with others. It's just like we have so much collective power together, and that power can be shared, it can be co-created. We can, I'm thinking of that Bill Withers song where it's like, the words escaping me right now, but it's like we can lend power to other people until they feel powerful and they can do it on their own. And so I love that you address those themes in your book.
Yes, that it can be power with, as you're saying, rather than power over. And that power doesn't have to be zero sum, that you're having power doesn't have to take away from mine. Why? If I'm in my power, I can celebrate you being in yours. It's not a limited, pie. We can all be standing in our power and work through whatever conflicts come up. We can get through this, all of us in our power.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was asked recently, because this comes up a lot in my practice, that sometimes people feel like they're bragging or they're calling too much attention to themselves if they're sharing what they're doing, on social media, in their network. And as she was asking me about this, I was like, wow, yeah, it's interesting how we have it twisted, because at the same time, when we see people, like I'm just going to use you as an example, and you've got your book behind you. It's like, wow, like you wrote this book that could, like you being in your power is inspiring other people to awaken to their power and to being in their power. Are you creating this summit? It's just like, wow, if he created this interview series, is bringing all these international people together, maybe I can do it. And yes, power can be the other way, like sometimes people can be intimidated by that and be like, oh, you wrote a book, you've interviewed these many people, I could never do something like that. And so it's just really, like I said, it's like we really have the opportunity, like we can be empowered by seeing what other people are doing. We can also be disempowered by seeing, but I imagine that if you're here and you're watching this, you're using it as an excuse to be more in your power, to awaken to your power.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, that what drives all of what I do is that sense of mission that we were talking about before. So that I'm not apologetic about, having that banner of the book behind me, because to me, it's not about ego. It's not about the fact that I wrote a book. To me, the book is the means to an end. The book is what helps me convey the message that's going to make a difference in real human lives. So, and the same thing applies to, to promotion. Is like, I'm naturally introverted. I didn't want to be in the public eye. I'm most comfortable by myself in nature. And so I know that what I do is service oriented, so when I put myself in like situations like, how am I going to get my message in today's society that we're so, like, our attention there's so much bombarding us, and we're living such an ADD society. Like, if we're going to fulfill our mission, we've got to get the message out there. So how do we do that? And that's part of the beauty of your business coaching, is that you help people not only to structure their mission and to put it into the framework of a business, of a viable business. But you also coach people to, all right, how do you get your message out there? How do you get followers?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, we've been talking about leadership, and sometimes like I have some clients who identify as introverted. And so like just the whole idea that if you're a leader, you should be extroverted, right? Or like you have to have a certain type of personality. And I love hearing that you're an introvert and still you're doing what you're doing. And I feel like that's part of what I do in my work, is that no matter what personality you have, no matter, one of the things I work with is archetypes in my business. Like all of the archetypes can be successful. All of the archetypes can find a way to put themselves out there in a way that's authentic and meaningful for them. And so back to what we were talking about, like leadership having to look a certain way. Step one was you get to define what leadership means to you. In terms of my coaching business, like I support people to share in a way that feels authentic to them. Like, so some people don't want to be on video, but they prefer to have a podcast, or they really love to write. And so it's always coming back to who am I? What's the most authentic way that I want to share, and how can I get my message out there? I was going to say, unfortunately, it can appear, but it's not true, because you don't have to get sidetracked that way. It can appear as though you have to be a certain way and have a certain type of personality. But I have clients who are so different, and they still are able to get clients, get their message out there. I was just sharing the woman who, she's an educational consultant. She sings, she coaches. I have another client who really identifies, she's an accountant, she identifies as an introvert, and she loves to blog. So it's really coming back to the deeper work of like, who am I and how do I most want to share? How do I most want to connect with people? And asking yourself over the life of your business, because we might change and evolve, because you might feel good with one strategy now, and later on you may have feel like you've outgrown it, or it no longer expresses who you are today.
Yeah, really, really good stuff that you just shared this, that we get to do this in a way that is a match with who we are. Just in the same way that we get to express leadership or step into our power in a way that is congruent with who we are. So as you work with spiritual entrepreneurs, and you've mentioned, you've alluded to a couple, but what kind of leadership challenges do you see in the clients that you work with? And how can you help them, for somebody who's spiritually based, how can you help them to step into that role, to lead from, call it their spiritual self, their authentic nature, their higher self, whatever you want to call it?
Well, I think it always, we probably hear this a lot, but it's because it's true, is that starting with like, why is this work so important to you? Getting in touch with how this work has transformed your life, how has it transformed other people? So it's like, if you're coming from that base and remembering that, then it's way easier to not get distracted or pulled down by the disappointments that can come up, or if things don't go the way you want, because you know that you're doing this for something so much bigger. And some of the challenges, a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs have, one is around money, having some ambivalence around charging. So wanting to make a good income, but at the same time, feeling bad about charging, or it's interesting because you want to make money, but then you feel bad about charging. And so being willing to see that it is spiritual to have that exchange. I just paid for a service yesterday. It was a consultation to help me with something in my personal life. I was so grateful. Christian. I was happy to give them my money and get the support and the help that I received. And I'm sure for those of you that are watching, you pay for things all the time that you feel so grateful. And a lot of people that I work with, they have invested in retreats, in yoga training, in their own coaching certification, yet somehow when it comes to them being the provider and them being paid for their services, it can kind of feel uncomfortable, or like that's something that they get to work through. And so I'm using the word get because it is something that you get to work through, and realize that you're not taking money, you're getting a service, you're exchanging something. So like when you buy a book, when you buy Awakening the Soul of Power, you're going to give your coins, you're going to get this book. And I often say that when you work with a coach or a guide, a healer, teacher, whatever, that a good coach, a good teacher stays with you beyond the 3 weeks, 6 weeks, year that you worked with them. And so really getting clear of what the benefits are. So just even so there's the practical pieces, like as you get really clear on what it is you're actually offering, writing those down, saying those words out loud, it will no longer feel like I'm charging this money for air. You're not, it's not air. It's something very practical, spiritual, that's making a difference in someone's lives. Some other challenges, people worry about being salesy or pushy. And I understand that, because as I think if you identify as a heart-centered person, you probably are sensitive, you probably are empathic, and you don't want to manipulate, coerce. And I've heard that, heard the word manipulation. I feel like I've used it myself in the past of thinking like, well, I don't want to manipulate. And ironically, Christian, the people who are most worried about that are the least, oftentimes the least coercive and
Yeah.
manipulative. So getting into tangible, like what is it, like getting really intimate with your offer. Like, what am I really offering? What are the benefits? What have other people said? And I have found that as they start to do that work and do it, even though it feels uncomfortable, that they get better at it and really begin to realize the value of what what they're offering, and that it really is an exchange, and that the compensation is a thank you for what you're receiving.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up. And I struggled, and not I don't now, but in the beginning I struggled with charging for spiritual work because that was the conditioning, that you don't charge for spiritual work. And then I realized, wait a minute, that's from a time where there was the priestess or the priest or the shaman or the medicine woman. They were taken care of by the village, by the community, and that's not the world in which we live today. We have bills to pay, and we got to put food on the table also. Um, and then I also love that you mentioned that about sounding sales, because that one I struggled with more recently, as I had to pivot, like most of us did, or all of us did, from doing 3D retreats and workshops to, because of the pandemic, had to pivot to do it online, and had to learn some skills that were different to me, that were new to me. And that's what's so primary for me. I didn't want to come across as pushy or salesy. And there were a couple of situations as I found my way and how to do this in this new world that to me, somebody else may not have noticed, but to me it felt like the pendulum went a little bit too much into that salesy language. So, but I think you're right. As long as we're coming from that place of heart and place of service, that we learn how to navigate for us. And it is, like, all right, that kind of the pendulum. Okay, that didn't feel so good. Then we go back a little bit in the other direction. So you've helped so many clients do things like getting their first paying clients, getting their first $10,000 month, creating and developing their own niche, leading their own workshop. How do you do that? So many people in this summit are like feeling the call to do that. How do you start and grow your own community online or in 3D? How to charge or charge more for your services? How to position yourself as experts? So what advice? I know that's a lot, but what advice do you have for viewers, for participants of the summit, to gain more clarity and more confidence in their own purpose?
Yeah, I believe that we are always getting nudges and intuitive hits, and some of us listen to them and some of them don't. So probably right now, as you're listening to this, you have probably had the intuitive hit to reach out to someone, to host a workshop, to collaborate with this person. And my invitation is to trust that nudge and go in that direction. Because once you go, like oftentimes people are trying to make decisions like in their head on this side of the equation versus once you engage with the process, once you engage with where you're feeling called to move, that's when you get more clarity and you get more confidence. And you're like, wow, I actually really love teaching. I didn't know I was going to love teaching so much. I should do that more. And it's going to inform your next steps. So the best advice I can give you is to actually listen to
Mm.
what your spirit's already been telling you, but maybe you have been reluctant or questioning or afraid to take action. And if you still feel afraid to take action on that nudge that you're hearing, then I would encourage you to get support, whether that is the support of a coach or, you know, a community or a group. I feel like most people thrive when they're around others. And especially if you're feeling confused or trepidatious or feeling vulnerable about doing something, having that support is really going to empower you and embolden you to take the next step. And I would say that you're not watching this on accident. Like there's a reason that you said, hey, I want to awaken my soul power because there's something inside of you that really wants to come out. And I want to encourage you that now is the time to take, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay to be messy because, like Christian was saying, we learn and grow. Like he said, the pendulum went all the way over there. And I was like, And this is like entrepreneurship is a messy process. Like you engage with it and you learn and you say, you know what, I don't think that's really me. This is more me. And so we get to test these boundaries
Mm.
and play. And I want to encourage you to have fun and move in the direction that lights you up, because when you do that, other people will see that, be drawn to you, and will want more of it. So more of you is what you want, and it's also what the world wants.
Beautiful. You write and teach about elevating your leadership presence. Is that what you're talking about? What does that mean to you, elevating your leadership presence?
Yeah. So elevating your leadership presence, I think first is, so oftentimes we're asking questions from our mind and trying to figure it out. And so if you come back into your heart, literally just placing your hand on your own body, your hands on your own body, taking a few breaths and asking, like, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? Or whatever questions that are coming up for you. So that's you first being present with yourself before you're being present with your audience. And that is really going to help you come from a more embodied place. Like oftentimes in my classes or videos, I take a few moments to connect to my breath. It also helps regulate my nervous system and helps me like eliminate all the external voices. Like I'm always doing my best. I'm not doing it perfectly, to come from here, to come from my own heart. And when you come from your heart, you're going to feel your own presence. You're going to feel connected to source, and other people are going to feel, you're going to feel connected to your audience, even though you don't see them. So I don't even see you right now, but I feel you. I'm feeling the container. I've never met Christian in person, but I like feel his energy. And so you're just going to keep coming from an open heart. Like, okay, I made that mistake. That didn't feel right. I get to pivot. I get to change. This is a growth process for me.
Mm. Mm. Beautiful. And speaking about growth, I know that you also write about and teach about visibility, being critical to the growth of our mission, of our business, of the growth of our ability to generate income. So talk about that, and from your personal perspective too, that in your own personal journey you went from being terrified of being online with zero social media presence, not even a Facebook profile, to having launched over 100 videos with more than 100,000 views on 4 social media platforms. So talk about that, and how do we overcome the fear of being visible?
One step at a time, one step at a time. I think one step, what the first thing is to realize that it's earlier in this conversation, I said that public speaking is the number one fear. And I think that's about being visible, is about having people see you. And so I would start in places that it feels safe to be seen. And that might, visibility first might even just start with you in your own journal and saying, I want to create something and I want to put it out there and I'm terrified. And maybe you just are visible with your friend. I became visible. I started doing circles, and I always had a friend attend with me. And so if no one came and people did come, I was just like, okay, I know my best friend's here. I've had circles where I had my mom, so it's like, ask yourself, what do you need? So in the first, we already talked about, okay, what's the intuitive hit that you're getting? And then ask yourself, what support do I need to do this? Do I need to ask someone to come with me? Do I need to ask someone to hold my hand? Do I need to tell people to come? And so ask yourself what support you need to take that action, and then celebrate when you've actually taken the action. Like, wow, I did my first Facebook Live, or I hosted my first retreat. Celebrate all that it took to do that. And you are going to build so much confidence. Like, just you following through on an idea is incredibly confidence building. So in terms of visibility, like the more visible, like people can't buy our books, they can't buy our programs, they can't be a part of what we're doing if we don't know. So it's our responsibility to show up and to share. The great thing is that you get to choose how you want to show up and share. And being visible is how you're saying, like, I'm worthy of taking up space. God, universe, source put me here for a reason, and I'm willing to share that reason step at a time. So you don't have to scare yourself, but show up in increments that feel doable and attainable for you.
So powerful and so beautiful, and communicated from the heart. So you walk your talk. Khadija, thank you so much for your time and for sharing of yourself and your work and your passion with us. Any final words? And we'll have a link connecting people to your website. And any final words, any final thoughts?
Yes, thank you so much, Christian, for inviting me. I can feel this container that you have created for this amazing series. And for those of you that are watching, that you're watching for a reason. And oh my gosh, you have so much to give. And I believe that you owe it to not only yourself, and I don't mean owe it as in guilt and shame, but like, oh my God, you owe it to yourself to explore, to express, to reveal all the beauty that's inside of you. And you get to do it step by step. And I just know that it's going to expand and grow from there.
Beautiful. Yeah. And what if we just eliminated the word failure from our vocabularies, and like you were saying earlier, to just let it be fun and let this be about self-expression. Thank you again so much for your time. And we'll also, did you want to say anything about the gift that you're offering to Summit participants to entice them and to thank them for getting on your email list?
Yes, it is called The Ultimate Guide to Client Creation. And so if you're a coach, healer, guide, service-based entrepreneur, and you're looking to get more clients in a way that feels aligned and authentic to you, you are going to get a lot of value from this guide. And I cover the 4 M's, which I'm excited to share with you, to client creation in that.
Thank you. Thanks again, Khadija. And I'll let you know when I visit the Bay Area, and look forward to connecting in 3D once we're able to do that. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you.
Breaking the dark, piercing the night. made to shine. Bring the world a radiant light.